Alright, boys, I've got a new video for you guys today, and it's going to be titled Erasing Old Negative Identities. Without further ado, let's just get straight into it. So, men are widely perceived to be the most or the more rational of the two genders, but men are also widely ruled by their emotions. Now, I know hearing that you might have a knee jerk reaction. You might think I'm just chatting shit, but let me cook, right? I promise there's some substance to this argument. So, if you were to wake up and feel positive emotions, or no, let's just say if you felt positive emotions, you're more likely to work towards your goals, right? So, let's say you have a goal of getting in shape, the most obvious one. You have a goal of getting in shape, and you were to wake up and feel positive emotions. So let's say motivated. Let's say you felt motivated and driven. What are you more likely to do? You're more likely to get up, go to the gym, train hard, eat clean, and never give up, right? It's more likely. And the same goes in the inverse, but just in the opposite direction. If you woke up and you felt unmotivated, or you felt lethargic, you're less likely to go to the gym, train hard, eat clean, and never give up, right? Correct. I say that to say the emotional state that you're most frequently in becomes who you are. So this happens through a process called neuroplasticity. A phenomenon called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity, where your brain, so whatever emotional state you're in, your brain forms neural pathways for being in said emotional state. So the more you use that neural pathway of being in said emotional state, the more familiar your brain gets with using that pathway, and that becomes a habit, right? Cool. So let's take an example to illustrate this. So we've got two grandpas. One of them is like known as a nice guy, cool grandpa in the area. Just an overall nice guy. That's a good blanket statement. He's a nice guy. And then you've got the other grandpa. He's like grumpy. He's kind of annoying, but you have to respect him because he's an elder, right? This grumpy grandpa, if your dog was to walk on his property, he'd complain about it. Whereas this grandpa, the nice guy, if your dog was to walk on his property, he'd pet it, be nice to it, greet it, you know what I mean? And there isn't really much difference between these two grandpas. It's just that the grumpy one is more likely to have been in a negative emotional state across a longer period of time. So habitually, his brain is just more familiar with using that part of the brain than the positive part. And it's the same for the other guy. And I say that to say that grandpa, whichever one you choose, right? The positive one is now known as like the grandpa with a nice personality. That's become his identity. And the other one, grumpy grandpa, that's his identity now. He's a grumpy son of a, you get me. So I used to be, I'd say, I used to be widely ruled by negative emotions. But I managed to change that. And that's kind of brought me to where I am today. For example, I used to see myself as a lazy piece of shit. Not as a lazy piece of shit, because I always, because from young I was like very good at school, because my mom gave me a good head start. I was very good in school, so I wouldn't. Whenever I'd complete a task before everyone else, I'd just like put my head on the desk and fall asleep, or I just never asked for extra work because I felt like I already knew all of it. So I was, apathetic, lazy, didn't really give a shit. And I'd say for sure that definitely impacted my grades, 100%. I still got straight A's at my GCSEs, but it definitely did impact my grades. I could have got A stars or even A stars. It's definitely possible if I revised. I didn't even open a book a single day for revision because I just couldn't be bothered. I was just lazy, right? So that was the identity I had for myself because I was constantly putting myself in those emotional states. And there are other negative ones, but that's like the best one to illustrate this example, right? And you know how teachers tell you when you're in school, the real world is so different. You can't behave like this in the real world, and you just like brush them off. I don't know. That's what I used to do. I don't know about you guys, but that's what I used to do. I just brush them off. They'll be like, "Oh, you're gonna get a shock when you go into secondary school." That's what the teachers would say, or they'd say, "Oh, you're gonna get a shock when you go into the real world, or when you go off to uni." That's what they say in secondary school and sixth form. And I always used to brush them off and be like, these fucking idiots don't know what they're talking about. But when I started working, I realized that they were correct. And it took me a while to realize. So I started working and I was doing, normal contracted 39 hours a week. And, I was just doing the bare minimum, true to myself or true to my old self. So I'd just go in, do the bare minimum, 39 hours, and leave. And at some point, I realized this was only hurting myself, specifically my pockets, because I was leaving loads of money on the table. And I was kind of doing this in every other aspect of my life, apart from the gym. I was always going to the gym 6 days a week, 2 hours a day. And I still do. I've got two bad shoulders right now. They're both fucked. So yeah, I was lethargic about my work, and I realized I was just hurting myself more than anyone else because if I was to do 50 hours a week, which is, you know, an extra 11 hours, it's like 2 hours a day, something like that, I would make so much more money because one, it's overtime and you just get paid extra, like from the wages, right? So I was like, all right, cool. Let me try 50 hours a week. And I tried it for a week. And honestly, it wasn't hard. I was just doing the bare minimum beforehand. And this revelation kind of opened my eyes, not to the bigger picture, the whole reason I'm making this vid, but it opened my eyes to the fact that I could just work slightly harder and get such a disproportionately larger result or outcome. So I started working 50 hours a week for 6 months straight. Literally 6 months straight. I worked 50 hours a week. And I was still going to the gym. I still had time for leisure because I was working 5 days a week, right? Sometimes I'd work 6. Sometimes I worked 60-hour weeks. Those were actually grueling, but it was very rare. It was like 2-3 weeks. But yeah, I was working 50 hours a week straight for 6 months. And at some point, I can't pinpoint exactly when, I was no longer the teenager that was lethargic and couldn't be bothered and couldn't give a shit about what was going on. Nihilistic, that's a good word. But I became a hardworking, devoted young man in my own mind up here. So I won the mental battle. 50 hours a week became easy. I need you to understand that. Once the environment up here changed, the identity changed. And that was all from just changing the emotions. Initially, I thought 50 hours a week, what a drag, that's long. And then I actually did it. I experienced and felt that it wasn't hard. And then through working 50 hours a week for 6 months in a row, I completely shifted my own identity of myself. And in this past, so that happened, I'd say I came to that revelation around, let's say August last year. That's a safe bet because that's when I went on holiday to Croatia. That happened around, what month is August? The 9th month, right? So that happened 7 months ago. And in these last 7 months, I can confidently say I've been through the most personal growth because of that negative identity being gone. So because I changed the way and I thought and felt about myself, I was able to increase my income and then also increase my work rate multiple times over in many other fields. This has happened to me like before, that sort of realization that I can just work harder. It's happened to me before. Like I used to be a League of Legends player, stuck in platinum. For any of you who play League, I was stuck in plat, and I was stuck in plat for like 2 years. And then I changed the way I thought of myself, changed my role, started playing jungle, and then I climbed to Diamond 2 with 65% win rate. So it's happened before, but this was my first time noticing the change. So through changing my thought pattern, it changed my emotion, which therefore changed my identity and led to large amounts of progress. So I challenge you guys to meditate and identify your negative identities that are holding you back. You know, you might be depressed, you might be, I don't know, lazy like me, you might be nihilistic, struggling to find meaning in stuff. I challenge you to meditate and identify your old negative identities and work on them. Try and shatter them. Use neuroplasticity to change the way your brain works. There's actually a very good book on neuroplasticity. It's called You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza. I recommend reading that book. That's one of the first mindset books I ever read, but it's highly scientific. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the vid. Get that book, and I'll be seeing you guys next week Saturday for another vid.